The door to the attic room had not opened in 5 seasons. Lady Catherine Ashford no longer counted days. She had stopped when the number reached 1,000, when her voice grew hoarse from screaming, when her uncle's footsteps no longer even paused outside her prison. But on a November night in 1818, when frost painted the single window with cruel beauty, Catherine heard something she had forgotten existed, the sound of wood splintering. Not the delicate creak of hinges or the civilized turn of a key. No, this was violence. This was rage given physical form. This was the sound of a door that had been locked for 5 years, being torn from its frame by hands that refused to accept its existence. Catherine pressed herself against the wall, heart hammering. In 5 years, no one had come. No rescue, no mercy. Her uncle had made certain the world forgot Lady Catherine Ashford ever existed. The door exploded inward in a shower of splinters, and through the dust and darkness stepped a man she had never seen, yet whose reputation preceded him like a shadow. The beast Duke of Ravenscar. His face was a ruin of scars, a roadmap of violence that made servants cross themselves and ladies faint at balls. His eyes burned with something feral, something barely contained. He was enormous, dressed entirely in black, and he looked at her as though he could see straight through to her shattered soul. "Lady Catherine," he said, his voice a low rasp that sounded like it had forgotten gentleness, "your imprisonment is over." Catherine, who had not spoken to another human being in 3 months, who wore rags and ate scraps, who had been declared mad by a family that found her inconvenient, did the only thing that made sense. She laughed, not with joy, with the terrible, broken sound of someone who had survived the unsurvivable and no longer knew what hope looked like. "You're too late," she whispered. "There's nothing left to save." The Duke stepped into her prison, glass crunching beneath his boots, and said 4 words that would change everything. "Then we'll build something new. The heroines fall." Catherine Ashford had been 17 when her world ended. Not dramatically, not with fire or flood or scandal that shook London's ballrooms. No, her ending had been quiet, methodical, calculated. The death of her parents in a carriage accident should have made her a wealthy orphan, a tragic but desirable match. The Ashford fortune was considerable. The family name is impeccable. Catherine should have had a debut season, proposals, a future. Instead, she had an uncle. Lord Edmund Ashford, her father's younger brother, had arrived at the funeral with sympathetic words and hollow eyes. He spoke of duty, of protection, of family obligation. He moved into Ashford House within a week. He dismissed Catherine's lady's companion within a month, and within 3 months, he had her declared mentally unfit. The doctors he brought were discreet, professional, and paid well for the right diagnosis. Lady Catherine, they wrote with solemn expertise, suffered from hysterical delusions. She imagined persecutions that did not exist. She made wild accusations against her devoted guardian. She was a danger to herself and to the family name. She needed to be sequestered. For her own protection, the attic room had a bed, a chamber pot, a single window too high and too small for escape. Food came irregularly, sometimes twice a day, sometimes not for days. Water was brown and tepid. The servants who brought meals were forbidden to speak to her. Catherine screamed at first. She pounded on the door until her hands bled. She shouted the truth to anyone who might hear, that her uncle wanted her inheritance, that he planned to marry his own daughter to a Marquess and needed Catherine gone, that she was not mad, she was imprisoned. No one came. The tongue whispered, "Of course, they always did," but the whispers said, "Poor Lord Edmund, burdened with a mad niece. How tragic, such a lovely girl. Thank heavens he's doing the right thing, keeping her from public disgrace." Society, as it always did, believed the man with power over the woman with none, the Duke's curse. Marcus Thorne, Duke of Ravenscar, had not always been a beast. Once he had been merely a second son, handsome enough, charming enough, free enough to live without the crushing weight of a dukedom on his shoulders. Then came the fire, his brother's estate, engulfed in flames. Marcus had run into the inferno to save the servants trapped on the upper floor. He had pulled 3 people from burning rooms before the ceiling collapsed. He woke 3 weeks later, his face destroyed, his brother dead, and a dukedom he never wanted now his burden to bear. The scars were extensive, a jagged line from temple to jaw, another bisecting his left eyebrow, burn marks that twisted the skin of his neck and disappeared beneath his collar. His left hand bore the worst of it, fingers stiff and partially immobile from where he'd gripped burning wood. He looked, as the ballrooms whispered, like a monster. Ladies flinched when he entered rooms. Children cried. His own mother could barely look at him without tears, though whether from grief for his brother or horror at Marcus's appearance, he never asked. Marcus retreated to Ravenscar Abbey, a brooding Gothic pile in the north that suited his new reputation perfectly. He managed his estates with ruthless efficiency. He avoided society. He refused all invitations. He became the Beast Duke, and he told himself he preferred it that way. But isolation bred its own kind of madness, and Marcus, despite the monster's face, still possessed a heart that remembered justice. The intersection, they should never have met. A recluse duke and an imprisoned heiress existed in different kinds of hell, separate and unaware. But Edmund Ashford made a mistake. He tried to sell Ashford House. The property bordered Ravenscar lands. Marcus's solicitor brought him the deed, explaining that Lord Edmund wished to liquidate his niece's assets to pay debts. "I was unaware Lady Catherine had died," Marcus said, scanning the documents. The solicitor shifted uncomfortably. "She has not, Your Grace. She is indisposed. Lord Edmund holds power of attorney due to her condition." Marcus looked up slowly. "Her condition? Mental infirmity, Your Grace. She has been under his care for some years." Something cold settled in Marcus's chest. He knew that particular story. He had heard it before, how convenient diagnoses removed inconvenient women, how families buried daughters, wives, sisters behind locked doors and called it mercy. "How long has she been indisposed?" 5 years, Your Grace. 5 years. Marcus set down the documents. "I will not purchase the property, but I will investigate the circumstances of Lady Catherine's care." The solicitor paled. "Your Grace, I hardly think. You may go." It took Marcus 3 weeks to uncover the truth. 3 weeks of careful inquiries, discreet bribes, conversations with dismissed servants who remembered a girl who was not mad but desperate. 3 weeks to learn that Catherine Ashford had been 17 when her uncle locked her away, that no physician had examined her in 5 years, that she had not been seen by anyone outside the household since 1813, that she was still there, in the attic of her own house, forgotten by a society that found her inconvenient. Marcus had spent 5 years hiding from the world, convinced his scars made him unfit for human company. Catherine had spent 5 years hidden by the world, declared unfit by a man who wanted her erased. On a cold November night, Marcus Thorne decided he had hidden long enough. He took no servants, no solicitor, no witnesses who might complicate what he was about to do. He simply rode to Ashford House, walked past the shocked butler, climbed the stairs to the attic, and tore the door from its hinges with his bare hands. Because some doors were never meant to be locked, and some women were never meant to disappear. The rescue that wasn't. Catherine did not faint. She did not weep with gratitude. She did not throw herself into her rescuer's arms. She simply stood there, a ghost in rags, and stared at the Duke as though he were the delusion and not her salvation. "Who sent you?" Her voice came out like gravel, unused and broken. "No one." Marcus remained in the doorway, careful not to crowd her. He had seen animals in traps before. He knew how they reacted to sudden approaches. "I came because your uncle is attempting to sell property that is not his to sell." Catherine laughed again, that terrible sound. "So you came for land, not for me." The truth of it struck harder than Marcus expected. "I came because something was wrong. The land simply revealed it." How noble. She moved to the window, turning her back to him, either because she trusted him not to harm her, or because she no longer cared if he did. "And now that you've discovered the mad heiress in the attic, what do you intend? To return me to my uncle with a stern lecture? To have me examined by more doctors who will confirm his diagnosis? I intend to remove you from this house." "To where? An asylum?" Her shoulders were so thin Marcus could see every vertebra through the ragged dress. "That would be worse. At least here, I know the dimensions of my cage." Marcus stepped into the room fully. It was smaller than his dressing room at Ravenscar. The bed was barely more than a cot. The chamber pot in the corner reeked. 5 years. 5 years in this space. "I am taking you to Ravenscar Abbey," he said. "You will have proper rooms, proper care, and proper food. You will not be a prisoner." Catherine turned finally, and Marcus saw her face fully, for the first time. She had been beautiful once, The bones were fine, aristocratic, but her skin was sallow from lack of sun, her eyes too large in a gaunt face, her hair a matted tangle that might have been blonde beneath the filth. She looked at his scars without flinching, perhaps because her own were simply less visible. Why? The question held genuine confusion. You don't know me. I'm nothing to you. Why would the beast Duke, who hasn't been seen in society in 5 years, suddenly decide to rescue a woman the world believes is mad? The nickname didn't wound him. He had heard it too many times. Because, Marcus said quietly, I know what it is to be locked away. Mine was simply a cage I built myself. Something flickered in her eyes. Not trust, but recognition. I don't have proper clothes, she said finally. I have a coach waiting. And a blanket. Your servants will talk, taking a madwoman from her home in the middle of the night. I brought no servants. And you are not mad. How do you know? Catherine tilted her head, and for a moment Marcus saw the sharpness that had made her dangerous to her uncle. You've known me for 5 minutes. Perhaps I am precisely what they say. Perhaps I will murder you in your sleep. Then at least, Marcus said, I will have died doing something other than hiding. The words hung between them honest, raw, unintended. Catherine studied him for a long moment. Then she walked to the door, stepping carefully around the splintered wood. Very well, Your Grace. Let us see which of us is more broken. The journey. The coach ride to Ravenscar was silent for the first hour. Marcus had wrapped Catherine in his greatcoat. She disappeared inside it, a tiny figure drowning in black wool. She sat in the corner of the seat, as far from him as the space allowed, and stared out the window at the dark countryside rolling past. He didn't try to fill the silence. He suspected she had been forced into enough false conversation in her life. But when they stopped to change horses, and Marcus returned with bread and cheese, Catherine spoke. Does it hurt? She gestured vaguely toward her own face. The scars? No, not anymore. But they did, once. Yes. She accepted the food but didn't eat immediately, just held it, as though testing whether it was real. Do people scream when they see you? Marcus almost smiled. Children, occasionally. Ladies are more polite. They simply avoid looking at me altogether. That seems worse. It is. Catherine took a small bite of bread, chewed carefully, swallowed. My uncle told me I had demons in my head, that I needed to be kept away from society, for everyone's safety. After a while, I started to believe him. You don't have demons. How do you know? She looked at him directly. Perhaps madness is simply what they call women who refuse to be convenient. The observation was so precisely correct that Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Then half of society should be in attics, he said. Only the female half. Catherine took another bite. The men are allowed their inconvenient truths. They're called eccentric, or passionate, or troubled geniuses. We're simply mad. They sat in silence while the horses were changed. When they resumed the journey, Catherine spoke again. Why did you really come for me? Marcus considered lying. Considered maintaining the fiction that this was about property or justice or duty. But she had been lied to enough. Because I read the reports from the dismissed servants. Because I learned you were 17 when they locked you away. Because, he paused, because my brother died in a fire I survived, and I have spent 5 years believing my scars made me unfit for the world. And then I learned about a woman who had been declared unfit by the world itself. And I thought. He stopped. You thought? Catherine prompted. I thought perhaps we were both wrong. About our unfitness. The coach rolled on through the dark. I killed my parents, Catherine said suddenly. Marcus went still. That's what my uncle said. That I caused the accident. That I had insisted on going to London that day, and my father, being a doting father, agreed. And on the road, the carriage overturned. And they died, and I survived. Her voice was flat, emotionless. He said God spared me so I could carry the guilt, that my hysteria was divine punishment. You were 17 years old, Marcus said, his voice hard. A daughter wanting to go to London is not murder. An accident is not your fault. I know that now. I think I've always known it. But when you hear something enough times, when it's the only voice in your head, she trailed off, it becomes your truth. Yes. The countryside gave way to rougher terrain moors and rocky outcrops. They were approaching Ravenscar lands. What if I'm not what you expect? Catherine asked quietly. What if I can't be normal again? What if 5 years has broken something that can't be repaired? Marcus looked at her, this woman who had survived the unsurvivable, who spoke with such brutal honesty, who hadn't wept or swooned, but had simply asked what came next. Then, he said, you'll be broken at Ravenscar instead of in an attic, and that seems, at minimum, an improvement. Catherine smiled for the first time. It was small, fragile, and utterly devastating. You're very practical for a beast, and you're very articulate for a madwoman. Perhaps we're both frauds. Perhaps. Ravenscar Abbey appeared on the horizon, a dark Gothic fortress that looked like it had been carved from the moors themselves. Turrets and gargoyles, ancient stone and leaded windows. It should have been frightening. Catherine leaned forward, eyes wide. It's perfect, she breathed. Marcus, who had always thought Ravenscar too grim, too forbidding, too much like the monster everyone believed him to be, felt something unfamiliar bloom in his chest. Yes, he said quietly. I suppose it is. The first morning. Catherine woke in a bed so soft she thought she was still dreaming. For 5 years, she had slept on a thin mattress that smelled of mildew. She had woken to cold, to hunger, to the certain knowledge that this day would be identical to the one before. Now she woke to warmth, to clean sheets, to morning light streaming through windows without bars. She lay very still, afraid that movement would shatter the illusion. A knock at the door. My lady, a woman's voice, gentle. I'm Mrs. Brennan, the housekeeper. His Grace asked me to attend to you. Catherine sat up slowly. Come in. The housekeeper was a sturdy woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and capable hands. She carried a tray with tea, toast, eggs, more food than Catherine had seen in a week. Good morning, my lady. I've prepared a bath for you, and His Grace has sent for a modiste from the village. She'll be here this afternoon to take your measurements. Catherine stared at the food. This is all for me? Something soft crossed Mrs. Brennan's face. Yes, my lady, and there's more if you'd like it. Catherine's hands shook as she reached for the teacup. I don't know what to do. Do, my lady? How to be this? A person who has tea and toast and baths. I've forgotten how. Mrs. Brennan set the tray down and sat on the edge of the bed, improper, but necessary. Then we'll remember together, one thing at a time. First, tea. Can you manage that? Catherine nodded, tears burning. Yes, I can manage tea. Good, that's all you need for now. The beast's kindness. Marcus kept his distance that first day. He knew Catherine needed space, time to adjust. He instructed Mrs. Brennan to provide everything necessary, but not to pressure or overwhelm. He had meals sent to her room. He gave orders that no one was to disturb her unless she requested it. But in the evening, he found himself outside her door. He knocked softly. Lady Catherine? It's Ravenscar. May I enter? A pause. Then, yes. She sat by the window, wearing a simple dress Mrs. Brennan had found from somewhere too large, but clean. Her hair had been washed and braided. She looked impossibly young. I wanted to ensure you had everything you needed, Marcus said, staying by the door. I have more than I've had in 5 years. Catherine turned to face him. Why are you doing this? I told you. No, the real reason. Her eyes were sharp despite her fragility. Men don't rescue strange women out of abstract justice. What do you want from me? The question was fair. In her position, Marcus would ask the same. He stepped into the room fully, into the light, where she could see his scars clearly. I want nothing from you, he said quietly, but I will tell you what I hope for, which is that you heal, that you remember who you were before your uncle made you doubt it, that you live. He paused, and selfishly that seeing you do so reminds me that I can as well. Catherine studied him for a long moment. You're lonely. The words hit with unexpected force. Yes, and you think rescuing me will fix that? No. I think we're both imprisoned people who might understand each other better than the world understands either of us. She stood, walked closer. Up close, Marcus could see the faint scars on her wrists from scratching at the door, perhaps, or from restraints. His jaw tightened. I don't know how to trust, Catherine said. I don't know if I can. I don't require trust. I only require honesty. Then honestly, she lifted her chin. I'm terrified. Of you, of this house, of the fact that this might be real, and I'll wake up back in that room. I'm terrified that I'll disappoint you, that I'm not the person you think I am, that I'm exactly what my uncle said, broken and worthless and mad. Marcus wanted to touch her, to offer comfort, but he kept his scarred hands at his sides. "You are none of those things," he said fiercely. "And if it takes a year, or 5 years, or the rest of our lives for you to believe that, I will wait." "Why?" "Because," Marcus said, the truth pulling itself from somewhere deep, "in 5 years of hiding from the world, no one looked at me the way you did in that coach, as though my scars were simply features, not horror, as though I was a man, not a monster." Catherine's eyes glistened. "Perhaps that's because I know what it's like to be called a monster when you're only human." They stood there, 2 people reconstructed from ruins, and something fragile bloomed in the space between them. Small moments. The days developed a rhythm. In the mornings, Catherine took breakfast in her room. Mrs. Brennan sat with her, helping her remember how to eat full meals, how to wear proper clothes, how to exist in spaces larger than 12 feet square. In the afternoons, she explored the house. Ravenscar was enormous library, music room, conservatory, portrait gallery. Catherine moved through it like a ghost, becoming corporeal, touching things carefully as if they might vanish. Marcus watched from a distance. He didn't intrude, but he left signs of his presence, a book she'd mentioned wanting to read, placed on a library table, flowers from the conservatory appearing in her room, a shawl draped over her favorite chair. Small kindnesses, nothing requiring acknowledgement. Simply, "I see you, you exist, you matter." One afternoon, Catherine found him in the library. "May I join you?" Marcus looked up from his estate ledgers. "Of course." She settled into the chair across from him, a book in hand. They read in companionable silence for an hour. Then Catherine spoke. "What happened to your brother?" Marcus set down his pen. Most people never asked directly. "Fire. The estate in Surrey. He was the heir, the important one. I was merely the spare." He touched the scar on his jaw unconsciously. "I pulled 3 servants from the upper floors. I went back to him. The ceiling collapsed before I could reach him. You tried to save him." "I failed to save him." Catherine closed her book. "My uncle said I killed my parents by existing, that my presence in the carriage was the cause of the accident, that I was cursed. Your uncle was a liar, as is the voice in your head that says you failed your brother." The observation was cut clean and true. Marcus met her eyes. "Why is it easier to believe the worst of ourselves?" "Because," Catherine said softly, "the world tells us we're right to do so, and after a while, we stop fighting." "Is that what you did? Stopped fighting?" "Yes." No shame in her voice, simply the truth. "Around year 3, I realized no one was coming, that I could scream forever and nothing would change, so I stopped. I became silent, still, exactly what my uncle wanted. It was easier than the alternative." "What was the alternative?" "Hope." The word sounded like a wound. Hope was worse than despair because hope kept breaking. Marcus understood that with terrible clarity. He had stopped hoping people would see past his scars, stopped hoping he could be anything other than the Beast Duke. "And now?" he asked. Catherine looked around the library at the books, the warm fire, the space, the freedom. "Now I don't know what to feel. It's terrifying." "Feeling anything is terrifying," Marcus agreed. "It's why I stopped." They sat in shared understanding, 2 people who had survived by not feeling, and who now faced the dangerous prospect of letting emotions return. "Will you teach me something?" Catherine asked suddenly. "What?" "How to ride. I used to ride before. I'd like to remember." The request was simple. The trust implicit in it was not. "Tomorrow," Marcus said, "if the weather holds." Catherine smiled her second smile, still fragile but growing stronger. "Thank you." After she left, Marcus sat for a long time, staring at the space she'd occupied. He had thought rescuing her would be a single act, an event with a clear end. He was beginning to realize it would be the work of months, perhaps years, and perhaps, in saving her, he would learn how to save himself. The riding lesson. The stable master, Rogers, had been with Ravenscar for 30 years. He'd seen Marcus before the fire, after the fire, through all the dark years of isolation. He didn't bat an eye when Marcus appeared with Catherine. "Your Grace, my lady, I've prepared Moonlight. She's gentle, perfect for relearning." Catherine approached the grey mare carefully, offering her palm. Moonlight snuffed it, ears forward. "She's beautiful," Catherine breathed. Marcus watched her interact with the horse, the natural ease, the confidence that hadn't been beaten out of her entirely. You did ride before. Every day. I loved it. My mother said I was half wild when I rode. Her smile faltered. My uncle said that was proof of my madness. Those ladies didn't ride like I did. Your uncle, Marcus said, his voice edged with cold fury, understood nothing about spirit. He helped her mount his scarred hands, careful, impersonal. Then he mounted his own horse, a massive black stallion named Phantom. They rode slowly at first. Catherine was unsteady, her body remembering but uncertain. Marcus stayed close, ready to catch her if she faltered. But she didn't falter. As they rode across the moors, wind whipping Catherine's hair free from its pins, something changed. Her shoulders straightened, her grip steadied, color bloomed in her pale cheeks. "Faster," she called. Marcus grinned, a rare expression that pulled at his scars. "If you're certain." "I'm certain." They galloped across the open land, horses thundering over heather and stone. Catherine laughed, a real laugh, full and joyous and alive. Marcus realized he was laughing too. When they finally slowed, both breathless, Catherine's eyes were bright with tears. "Thank you," she said, "for this, for remembering that I'm not made of glass." "You're made of steel," Marcus replied. "Anyone who survived 5 years in that room is stronger than any titled lord in London." "Even you?" "Especially me. I simply hid by choice. You had no choice at all." They rode back slowly as the sun began to set, painting the moors in gold and amber. "Marcus?" Catherine's use of his name, not "Your Grace," sent warmth through his chest. "Yes, I'm glad you broke down the door." "So am I." And for the first time in 5 years, Marcus Thorne looked at his scarred hand holding the reins and didn't see a monster. He simply saw a man who had done something right. The uncle's arrival. 3 weeks of peace shattered on a grey December morning. Marcus was in the library when Hastings, his butler, appeared ashen-faced. "Your Grace, Lord Edmund Ashford is at the door. He demands to see you and Lady Catherine." Every muscle in Marcus's body went rigid. "Tell him." "I already have, Your Grace," he insists. "He's brought a magistrate and 2 physicians, he says." Hastings hesitated. "Say it." "He says you've kidnapped his ward and he's here to retrieve her legally." The world narrowed to a single point of cold fury. Marcus rose slowly. "Where is Lady Catherine?" "The conservatory, Your Grace." "Send Mrs. Brennan to stay with her. Tell her to lock the doors. No one enters. No one." "Yes, Your Grace." Marcus descended the stairs like a storm, taking human form. Lord Edmund Ashford stood in the entrance hall, a man of middle age, with thinning hair and the kind of face that wore righteousness like armor. Beside him stood a nervous magistrate and 2 physicians carrying medical bags. "Your Grace," Edmund said, his voice oozing false courtesy. "Thank you for receiving us. I've come to collect my niece. I understand you've been caring for her in my absence." "Your absence?" Marcus's voice could have cut stone. "You locked her in an attic for 5 years. I provided medical care for a troubled young woman, as was my duty as her guardian." Edmund's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Now I'm here to continue that care. Surely you understand." "I understand perfectly. You wanted her inheritance. You declared her mad so you could control her property." The magistrate shifted uncomfortably. "Your Grace, these are serious accusations." "They are facts." Marcus turned his full attention to the magistrate. "And I have testimony from dismissed servants, financial records, and the evidence of Lady Catherine herself." "The ravings of a madwoman," Edmund said smoothly. "Your Grace, I understand you mean well, but Catherine is not well. She suffers from delusions, violent tendencies. She's dangerous." "The only danger," Marcus said coldly, "is to your bank account now that she's free." One of the physicians stepped forward. "Your Grace, we simply wish to examine Lady Catherine. If she's truly well, we'll confirm it." Marcus laughed a harsh sound. "You're the same physician who declared her mad 5 years ago without examination. Forgive me if I don't trust your medical expertise." "Your Grace," the magistrate said carefully, "Lord Edmund does have legal guardianship. Unless you can prove—" "Prove what?" "That she's sane." Marcus's scarred face twisted into something fierce. "Define sanity. Is it sane to lock a 17-year-old girl away because she's inconvenient? Is it sane to starve her, to keep her in darkness, to make her believe she's worthless?" "This is precisely the problem," Edmund said, addressing the magistrate. His Grace has become emotionally compromised. Catherine has that effect. She's very convincing, but she's manipulating him, just as she tried to manipulate me. I want to see her, one physician said. Now. No? The single word rang through the hall. Edmund's mask slipped. You cannot refuse. I can and I will. Lady Catherine is under my protection. You will not see her, examine her, or speak to her. Then you leave me no choice. Edmund nodded to the magistrate. Sir, I must insist you enforce the law. My niece has been taken without my consent. This is kidnapping. The magistrate looked profoundly uncomfortable. Your Grace, technically, Lord Edmund has a point. If he is her legal guardian, he obtained that guardianship through fraud, which would need to be proven in court. Until then, the magistrate drew a breath. I'm afraid you must release Lady Catherine to her guardian's custody. The world stopped. Marcus stared at the magistrate, at Edmund's triumphant face, at the physicians with their bags full of laudanum and restraints. If Catherine went back with them, she would disappear again. Edmund would make certain of it this time. No more attic room, an actual asylum where screams went unheard and women were forgotten. No, Marcus said, Your Grace, I will not release her to a man who tortured her for 5 years. His voice was absolutely level. If you wish to remove her from this house, you will have to go through me. Edmund's eyes gleamed. Are you threatening violence against officers of the law, Your Grace? I'm telling you that I will protect Lady Catherine with my life if necessary. Marcus stepped forward, and even the magistrate flinched. And I suggest you consider whether you want to be the man who tried to take her. This is outrageous, Edmund sputtered. Magistrate, arrest him. On what charge? Marcus turned cold eyes to the official. Protecting an innocent woman from fraudulent imprisonment. By all means, try. See how that plays in the courts. See how it plays when I bring every dismissed servant, every piece of financial evidence, every witness to testify about what Lord Edmund did to his niece. The magistrate paled. Your Grace, I'm trying to follow the law. The law, Marcus said quietly, failed Lady Catherine 5 years ago. I will not allow it to fail her again. Silence fell heavy and dangerous. Then a voice spoke from the stairs. Perhaps you should ask me what I want. Everyone turned. Catherine stood on the landing, Mrs. Brennan beside her. She wore a simple day dress, her hair neatly arranged. She looked fragile but composed, and when her eyes met her uncle's, there was no fear in them, only ice. The confrontation. Catherine, Edmund's voice dripped with false concern. My dear child, thank God. This man has been holding you. This man saved my life. Catherine descended the stairs slowly. Each step is deliberate, which is more than you ever did, uncle. You're confused. Not well. Please, let these physicians help. I don't need physicians. I need you to leave. Edmund's mask cracked further. You will come home. Now. I am your guardian. You were my jailer. Catherine reached the bottom of the stairs. She was shaking, Marcus could see it, but her voice remained steady. And I will never go anywhere with you again. Catherine, listen to me. No, you listen. She stepped forward, and Edmund actually stepped back. I know why you locked me away. I know about the debts, about the investments that failed, about the money you stole from my inheritance to cover your losses. I know you needed me to be silent so I couldn't question where my parents' fortune went. The physicians exchanged glances. The magistrate's eyes widened. That's madness, Edmund said, but his voice had lost its conviction. The delusions are yours. Catherine turned to the magistrate. Sir, I am willing to be examined by independent physicians of His Grace's choosing, not by the men my uncle paid to lie about my condition 5 years ago. I am willing to testify in court about my treatment, and I am willing to have my father's financial records reviewed by the Crown. You have no right. I have every right. Catherine's voice finally rose, years of rage breaking through. I am Lady Catherine Ashford. I am 22 years old. I am the sole heir to my father's estate. And I am not mad. The hall rang with her words. Edmund's face went purple. You ungrateful after everything I did for you. You locked me in an attic and left me to rot. Catherine's composure shattered. You told me I killed my parents. You said I was cursed, that I deserved to suffer, that no one would ever want me or believe me. You stole 5 years of my life because you were worthless. Edmund shouted, his own control breaking. "Your father's failure of a daughter. He died because of you, and you deserved everything." Marcus moved. One moment he stood beside Catherine. The next, he had Edmund by the throat, lifted against the wall. "Your Grace," the magistrate's voice was distant through the roaring in Marcus's ears. "You," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper, "will never speak to her again." Edmund clawed at Marcus's hand, the scarred one, the one everyone called monstrous. "Can't breathe." "Good. Marcus." Catherine's hand touched his arm. "Don't. He's not worth it." The touch broke through the red haze. Marcus released Edmund, who collapsed, gasping. "Get out," Marcus said. "All of you. And if you return to this estate, if you write her name, I will destroy you. I will use every resource, every connection, every bit of power my title provides to bury you so thoroughly that your own name becomes synonymous with cruelty." He turned to the magistrate. "As for the legal questions, I will petition the Crown to review Lady Catherine's guardianship, and I suspect when they investigate Lord Edmund's finances, they'll find more than enough reason to remove his authority." The magistrate helped Edmund to his feet. "Your Grace, this isn't." "It is. It must be. And it will be." Catherine stepped beside Marcus. "I will be testifying, under oath, about everything." Edmund's eyes were full of hate. "You'll regret this, both of you." "The only regret," Catherine said clearly, "is that I didn't find my voice sooner." They left Edmund, supported by the physicians, the magistrate clearly relieved to escape. The door closed. Catherine stood perfectly still for 3 heartbeats. Then her knees gave out. Marcus caught her before she hit the floor, scooping her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. "I've got you," he murmured. "You're safe. I've got you." "I faced him," Catherine whispered against his chest. "I actually faced him. You were magnificent. I was terrified. Bravery is being terrified and doing it anyway." He carried her to the library, to the chair by the fire. Mrs. Brennan appeared with tea laced with brandy. Catherine's hands shook so badly she could barely hold the cup. "He'll fight this," she said. "He'll claim I'm still mad, that you've manipulated me." "Let him try." Marcus knelt beside her chair. "We have truth on our side, and I have resources he can't imagine. I will bury him, Catherine. I swear it." "Why?" Her eyes searched his face. "Why risk so much for me?" Marcus took her trembling hands in his scarred ones. "Because," he said, "the truth, finally, completely honest. Somewhere in the last 3 weeks, you stopped being a woman I rescued and became the woman I—" He stopped, afraid of the words. "What?" Catherine whispered. Marcus looked at her strength, her courage, her broken, beautiful spirit that refused to surrender. "Became the woman I cannot imagine my life without." The words fell between them, heavy with meaning. Catherine set down the teacup with shaking hands. "Marcus, you don't have to say anything. I don't expect— I love you." The words stopped his breath. "I think I loved you," Catherine continued, tears streaming. "The moment you tore down that door, when you looked at me like I was a person worth saving, when you gave me space and kindness in your horrible, lonely house, that's the first place I felt safe in 5 years." Marcus couldn't speak, couldn't move. "I know it's too soon," Catherine said. "I know I'm broken, that I might always be broken." "You're not broken." Marcus's voice was rough. "You're the strongest person I've ever known." "Then why am I shaking?" "Because you just faced the man who tried to destroy you, and you won." Catherine laughed through her tears. "We won. You stood with me. Always," Marcus said. "If you'll let me." "Yes." "Simple? Certain?" "Yes." He pulled her into his arms, and they held each other while the fire crackled and the winter wind howled outside, and 2 people who had been alone for so long finally found home in each other. The court hearing. The petition to review Catherine's guardianship was heard in London, before 3 judges who had seen too many such cases and believed in too few. Marcus hired the best solicitors money could buy. He brought witnesses, dismissed servants, who testified about Catherine's treatment, neighbors who confirmed seeing a girl's pale face at the attic window, shopkeepers who noted Edmund's sudden spending after his brother's death. He brought financial records showing money systematically siphoned from Catherine's inheritance. And he brought Catherine herself. She sat beside him in the courtroom, dressed in a simple but elegant gown. She had insisted on testifying, despite Marcus's concerns. They need to hear it from me, she'd said. Otherwise, I'm still letting him speak for me. Edmund's solicitor tried to claim mental incompetence, tried to paint Marcus as a predator who had seduced a vulnerable woman. Then Catherine took the stand. She spoke for an hour, about the attic room, the hunger, the isolation, the deliberate cruelty of irregular meals, of silence, of being told daily that she was worthless. She spoke about her uncle's motivations, the gambling debts, the failed investments, the desperate need for her inheritance. She spoke with such precise, devastating clarity that by the end, even Edmund's solicitor looked ill. "Miss Ashford," one judge said gently, "do you believe you are of sound mind?" "I believe," Catherine said clearly, "that anyone held in those conditions would struggle. But yes, my lord, I am of sound mind. I always was. And do you wish to remain under the Duke of Ravenscar's protection?" Catherine looked at Marcus. Something passed between them. "I wish," she said, "to marry him." The courtroom erupted. Edmund shot to his feet. "This is proof. She's been compromised." "I have compromised nothing." Catherine's voice cut through the chaos. "I am a free woman, of age, making a choice. His Grace has never touched me inappropriately, never coerced me, never treated me as anything less than a person deserving of respect." The judge banged his gavel. "Order!" When silence fell, he looked at Catherine for a long moment. "Miss Ashford, this court needs to be certain. Has the Duke of Ravenscar proposed marriage to you?" Catherine turned to Marcus. He stood slowly, walked to the witness box, and did something he had never imagined doing. In front of 3 judges, a full courtroom, and the man who had tormented her for 5 years, Marcus knelt. "I have not," he said, his voice carrying, "because I feared I had no right. I am scared, reclusive, called a beast by society. I have no claim to someone as remarkable as Lady Catherine." He pulled a ring from his pocket, his mother's ring, retrieved from the Ravenscar vault that morning. "But if she will have me, if she will accept a man who has hidden from the world as thoroughly as she was hidden from it," his voice broke, "Catherine, will you marry me?" The courtroom was utterly silent. Catherine stepped down from the witness box. She knelt in front of him, so they were eye to eye. "Yes," she said, 10,000 times yes." Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands. Then he kissed her, not caring about propriety, about the judges, about anyone but this woman who had taught him how to live again. When they broke apart, one of the judges was smiling. "I believe that settles the question of Miss Ashford's competence," he said. "Only a woman of exceptional judgment would choose to marry for love when she could marry for security alone." "My lords," Edmund began. "Lord Edmund," the judge's voice went cold, "this court finds that your guardianship was obtained under false pretenses. Furthermore, we are referring your financial dealings to the Crown for investigation. You are stripped of all authority over Miss Ashford's person and property, effective immediately." He banged the gavel. "Miss Ashford is declared legally competent and free. This hearing is concluded." The claiming. They returned to Ravenscar that night, engaged. The household erupted in celebration. Mrs. Brennan wept. Rogers declared it about damn time. Even Hastings smiled. But when the house finally quieted, Marcus found Catherine on the terrace overlooking the moors. "You could have any man in London now," he said quietly. "Your inheritance is restored. Your name is cleared. You don't need me anymore." Catherine turned, the moonlight catching in her hair. "Is that what you think? That I'm marrying you out of need? I don't know what to think. A month ago, you hated the world. Now I'm free, and I choose you." She stepped closer, "Not because you saved me, not because I need protection, but because when I imagine my life, my real life, the one I get to build, I can't imagine it without you in it." Marcus cupped her face gently. "I'm not easy to live with. I have nightmares, dark moods, days when the scars hurt and I can barely look at myself. And I have days when I wake up and forget I'm not in that room, when I panic if a door is closed, when I can't bear to be touched." Catherine covered his scarred hand with hers. "We're both broken, Marcus, but maybe we're broken in ways that fit." He kissed her then deeply, thoroughly, pouring 5 years of isolation into the promise of never being alone again. When they pulled apart, breathless, Catherine smiled. "So when shall we marry? A long engagement? Spring, perhaps?" Marcus grinned, that rare expression that transformed his face. "I was thinking tomorrow." "Tomorrow? I've already waited 5 years to start living. I don't want to wait any longer." Catherine laughed, joyous and free. "Then tomorrow it is, the wedding." They married in Ravenscar's chapel, small, intimate, witnessed only by household staff and 2 independent physicians. Marcus had brought in specifically to certify Catherine's competence beyond any legal doubt. Catherine wore white silk, simple and elegant. Marcus wore black, as always. They spoke their vows without hesitation, without doubt. When the vicar pronounced them husband and wife, Marcus lifted Catherine's veil with his scarred hands. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life," he murmured, "making sure you never doubt your worth again." "And I," Catherine whispered back, "am going to spend the rest of mine making sure you see yourself as I see you, not as a beast, as a man." Their kiss was tender, reverent, full of promises that would take a lifetime to keep. At the wedding breakfast, Rogers raised his glass. "To the Duke and Duchess of Ravenscar, may they bring as much life to this house as they've brought to each other." "Here, here." Catherine looked around at the smiling faces, the warm room, the man beside her who was now her husband. 5 years ago, she had been locked in darkness. Now she was surrounded by light. The wedding night. Marcus had given Catherine the Duchess's suite, the finest rooms in Ravenscar, unused since his mother's death. They were connected to the Duke's chambers by a door that had remained locked for years. That night, Marcus stood in his room, staring at that door. He was terrified, not of the intimacy itself, but of whether Catherine truly wanted this, or simply felt obligated. A knock from her side. "Marcus, may I come in?" He opened the door. Catherine stood there in a nightgown, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked nervous but determined. She stopped. "This is ridiculous. We're married. You don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to." She stepped into his room. "But I need you to know something first." "What?" "I'm afraid. Not of you. Of being vulnerable. Of being touched in ways I couldn't control in that room. Of," her voice broke, "of not being able to give you what a wife should." Marcus took her hands gently. "Look at me." She did. "We have a lifetime," he said softly. "Tonight, tomorrow, next year. There is no should. There is only what we both want, when we both want it. And if that's simply sleeping in the same room, that's enough." Tears spilled down Catherine's cheeks. "How are you so patient?" "Because I know what it's like to be seen as less than human. I will never make you feel that way." Catherine kissed him then, not with passion, but with gratitude, with trust. They lay together that night, fully clothed, in Marcus's massive bed. They talked until dawn about everything and nothing, about childhoods and dreams and the future they would build. And when Catherine finally fell asleep in his arms, safe and warm, Marcus realized something profound. He had thought rescuing her would save her, but she had saved him just as completely. 6 months later, spring came to Ravenscar with an explosion of color. Catherine had transformed the gardens, planted roses, created walking paths, built a conservatory that blazed with life. The house no longer felt like a Gothic tomb. It felt like a home. She stood in the new garden, her hands dirty from planting, when Marcus found her. "There's news," he said. She looked up. "Good or bad? Edmund has been arrested. The Crown's investigation found extensive fraud. He'll be tried for theft, forgery, and unlawful imprisonment." Catherine set down her trowel. She waited for the surge of triumph, of vindication. Instead, she felt only sadness. "He destroyed himself," she said quietly. "I almost pity him." Marcus pulled her close, uncaring about the dirt. "Your compassion is extraordinary. After everything he did, I'm not compassionate. I simply don't want to give him any more of my life." She looked up at her husband. "He's already taken 5 years. I won't give him one more moment. Then we'll speak of him no more." They walked through the gardens together. In the distance, Ravenscar Abbey rose against the sky, no longer forbidding, simply home. "I've been thinking," Catherine said. "Dangerous," she laughed. "About other women. Girls like I was. Locked away, forgotten." Marcus stopped walking. "What are you suggesting?" "A foundation, using my restored inheritance and your resources, to investigate claims of unlawful confinement, to provide legal support for women who can't fight for themselves." Her eyes were bright. "To make sure no one else disappears the way I did." Marcus stared at her. "You're remarkable. You know that? I'm just trying to make meaning from the horror. It's more than that. It's justice. They began the foundation that summer, the Ashford Trust, named not for Edmund, but for Catherine's parents. Within a year, they had rescued 8 women from fraudulent confinements. Within 5 years, the trust was known throughout England. Catherine became a voice for the voiceless, and Marcus stood beside her every step, using his title and wealth to force doors open that had been closed to women for generations. 1 year later, "She has your eyes," Catherine said, gazing at the baby in her arms. Marcus touched his daughter's tiny hand. "And your stubbornness, I suspect." They had named her Eleanor, after Catherine's mother. She was 3 months old, healthy, and already showing signs of a powerful personality. "Do you ever think about that night?" Catherine asked. "When you broke down the door, every day. Do you regret it? The scandal, the gossip, the way society talks about the beast duke and his mad wife?" Marcus smiled. "Society can rot. I have everything I need here. Even though I wake you with nightmares, even when you panic in closed rooms, even when you need space or time, or just to be held without words." He kissed her forehead. "I signed up for all of you, Catherine. The easy parts and the hard ones." She looked up at him. "I never thought I'd be happy. After that room, I thought joy was something that happened to other people. And now I know that the darkest places can lead to the brightest light, if we're brave enough to walk through them." 5 years later, Eleanor was 5, a whirlwind of dark curls and her mother's green eyes. Her brother, Thomas, was 3, quieter, thoughtful, with Marcus's serious gaze. They played in the gardens while Catherine and Marcus watched from the terrace. "Remember when you asked what I wanted?" Catherine said suddenly. "When? That first morning, you asked what I wanted for my life." Marcus pulled her close. "I remember. You said you wanted to be seen. I'm more than seen now. I'm known. By you, by our children, by every woman we've helped free." She leaned into him. "I'm exactly who I was meant to be. As am I, thanks to you." Eleanor ran up to them, laughing. "Papa, Mama, look what I found." She held out a perfect white rose. Marcus knelt down, his scarred face gentle. "It's beautiful, darling. Like you." "Like Mama," Eleanor corrected firmly. Catherine felt tears prick her eyes, the good kind, the kind that came from joy so full it overflowed. 10 years ago she had been locked in darkness, told she was worthless. Now she stood in sunlight, surrounded by love, living a life that was entirely, authentically her own. "What are you thinking?" Marcus asked. Catherine smiled. "Those doors can be rebuilt. That broken things can be made whole. That beasts are often just men waiting to be seen. And mad women are often just women waiting to be heard." Yes. They stood together, watching their children play in gardens that had bloomed from ashes, in a house that had learned how to hold laughter, living proof that the worst prisons can give way to the greatest freedom, if we're brave enough to break down the doors